Mine says it is.
Yeah, mine's on.
Scruggle. We'll be informed soon enough if they're not.
Okay. How atheism is associated with
Charleston.
other
We're in.
views. Oh no, I bet it's, yeah, okay. That.
Oh, so Matt might be out for.
Matt's going to be out for the whole month,
Oh, okay.
which might mean I get to, interview Zach Coplin, which would be pretty awesome.
Oh, that would be cool.
Because apparently he's going to show up for next week. I heard that, replicators, bite me. Apparently they're watching us now.
Won't you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion.
Hi there, welcome to the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Russell Glasser, and here at the last minute and great expense is the inimitable Martin Wagner.
Hello, everyone.
Today is Sunday, December 1st, 2013. Happy December, everyone. We're a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We're available through live streaming video at ustream.tv, and the official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. You can provide feedback by commenting at freethoughtblogs.com/AXP or emailing us at tv@atheist-community.org. If you like this show, and you should check out our other podcasts, Godless Bitches, which I think is done for the year, but we'll be back next year, and the Nonprofits, which will be airing a new episode this Wednesday at 7 Central. You can find more details on the websites, and as always, if you're local to Austin and you like the show, you are allowed to come to Threadgill's afterwards, where a lot of us will be gathering for dinner and drinks at around 6 p.m. At 301 West Riverside Drive in way South Austin.
Yeah.
How are you doing this week,
I'm fine.
Martin?
I'm well. Thank you very much.
Welcome. I think
December
there's a little
already.
confusion scheduling for the rest of the year, but
As in the schedule's not up.
not at all.
We have no idea what we're
Apparently, Matt and Beth just, I guess I can say, they closed on a house. I'm not saying where. Don't stalk them.
On Earth.
But they are very happy and very busy. So, you know, if you want to send them good wishes on Twitter and Facebook and whatever, feel free. So I guess we're going right to calls today.
Why not? It's that kind of day.
That means
Yeah.
we're going to RJ in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
You're on.
How you doing?
We're good.
Good. How are you?
All right. So I wanted to ask you about control, and if you've ever, like, what's the worst that you've struggled through, and how did you cope with that, and how can we show people that they don't have to have something like that to cope with?
What do you mean? Can you be more specific?
You mean how
Well,
to?
they don't have to be. They don't have to. They don't have to turn to some kind of a religious belief to cope with something that they can cope. In a different way.
You mean like how do
secular people
be
cope
in
with-
control, or how do you deal with others' control over you?
I mean, I've never considered myself to go through like a serious struggle. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if you've ever been like a lot of people I guess I know or not that I know, but I've heard of or many things like that. Like they've been raped, or they've been. I don't know anyone that's been tortured, but people that have been tortured, people that have been to prison, and often it seems when they're out of control, and they feel like they can't do anything with the situation, they need something. They often turn to something like that.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, so I'm not an accredited psychologist or anything. I know that being through traumatic experiences like that can be very difficult for people, and it's important to, be able to have a support network and have people that you can trust and talk to, and maybe in some cases have. Try to get hold of some resources to speak to some sympathetic professionals. I'm sure that there are support groups for all the particular things you mentioned, like rape and ex-prisoners and stuff like that.
I found that.
I think, well, I mean, probably what you're asking with respect to religion has something to do with the fact that religious people like to sort of prey on those situations and jump on them and say, you guys need to, you need to get God in your life, which is kind of vile when somebody
when something like Columbine happened, right? Yeah. The Christian right jumped on that as they immediately politicized that. They were like, look, this is the reason why we need prayer and 10 Commandments in schools. Ever since those evil liberals took that out, this stuff's been going on. Of course, hopefully ignoring a lot of history. But
like I come from a pretty religious background, and like I don't want to take away something if they needed to cope, because I know I've talked to a couple people in my family, and I've shown them, I've made them question a little bit, and they've accepted that it kind of, looks a little sketchy, I guess. But I mean, they need it because they've relied on it in the past, and they feel like, they're not saying that there has to be, because like they don't read the Bible or anything like that. But I mean, they just need the idea, like, to be able to cope with things, and it's helped them in the past. So.
Well, yeah, if that's what you're used to, and if that's all that you've had to fall back on up to that point, that it's understandable that would be what they'd fall back on. I think that the best thing to do, though, as a secular person, I mean, you don't want to like take away the safety net they've got, because if nothing else is there to replace it with, that's going to be very confusing for somebody who's used to that. So the best thing that you can do as a secular person is just, in your own actions and in the things that go on in your own life, just show how it is that you deal with the same kind of problems or similar problems, on your own, without recourse to religion or faith or praying or whatever, the religious people might do. And just provide yourself as an example of how, look, there are other ways, there are secular alternatives, there are ways in which non-believers struggle with grief and with terrible events that have an emotional, psychological impact on your life. There are ways to do it. Everyone's a lot different. People have different experiences and different ways of coping with things. But yeah, the message that religion isn't the only coping strategy is very much an important one, I think, to put out there. And a lot of some of my own experience has shown me that I've just been able to see how very, very religious friends of mine and family members have gone through certain circumstances in their lives, but having the religion to fall back on didn't necessarily provide them with answers or guidelines or ways to get out of their situation or ways to improve or ways to actually fix what was messed up in their own lives that they weren't addressing, right? So there are any number of you might face, and I think that's the bad message that religion puts out there, is that if you just surrender all of your troubles and your problems to God, then they magically kind of go away. And if you pray and if you're devout and if you do all these things, just put all of your burdens on the Lord's shoulders and voila, it's like magic. It's you. But that's just not, it's not true and it's not fair. You still, at the end of the day, have to deal what's going on with your life.
If you were put into a situation, because honestly, I mean, I don't know what I'd do because, I think most people push the ideas or those kind of scenarios out of their heads. Mm-hmm. But if you were put into a situation like that, how do you think you would cope with it? And do you think, because with me, I don't know, what I would do. So,
I personally don't think that I would turn to the comforting make-believe stories. But the thing I do want to say is that I'm not the kind of atheist necessarily who thinks that religion is pure evil and must be stamped out at all costs. I don't think it's generally a positive net influence, but one of the things that I've always thought that religion does do effectively is provide the sort of support network that I was talking about. And it does it very selectively. I mean, it does it by creating an in-group, and by extension, there's going to be an out-group that they generally don't care for in the worst instances of religion. But I mean, one of the things that having a church group to go to will provide you is a group of other people that you can talk to and who will probably often have empathy. And I'd be lying if I said that atheists don't have a long way to go to provide a similar network of friendly and caring people. And I think that that's important. And I think I'm lucky enough to have a lot of good friends that I think I would turn to, and I'm very fond of my family, and I think that they would help me through that sort of thing.
I think that's good,
and I think that society could be doing more to provide like mental health services and things like that.
Another thing I wanted to get at was with rape. Say when people are raped, because I've known someone who was raped in the past. They often, you want to blame yourself when something like that happens, and the reason
that's true.
It's because you want to be in control, and you want to know that you don't want it to happen again. So how are you going to make this not happen? You have to put the blame on yourself. So you can have a sense of control.
And rape is an especially ugly crime in the sense that there's a lot more victim blaming going on than in cases of other crimes. Like if you get robbed, you don't usually expect a bunch of crimes. Like if you get robbed, you don't usually expect a bunch of police to come over and the first thing they ask you is, well, why didn't you do a better job locking your doors or whatever?
Well, but that's also, I don't think that's as traumatizing though, because with that, I mean, something as horrid as that, like you don't want it to happen again, and you have to put the blame on yourself so you can make sure it doesn't happen. But it's hard to do that because
that's the wrong way of going about making sure it doesn't happen again. I mean, there are ways to say, perhaps there are things that I could do better in terms of watching out for my own safety. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're putting the blame on yourself or that you're accepting any of the blame, but it does mean that there are ways that I can protect myself. There are things that I can do to learn to protect. To help friends know how to protect themselves, and a lot of that also has to do with perhaps meeting other people who have been in those kinds of circumstances, talking through it in like a support group situation, and in that way you perhaps learn to get over this whole idea that, well, maybe it was my fault. Well, no, it wasn't. I mean, somebody did something to you. And how can you avoid having that happen in the future? Maybe you can't, but at least you can know that
And if you know someone who is raped, the most important thing you can do is be supportive and non-judgmental of them.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. 100%.
But I think that's all the answer that we're qualified to give at the moment. So I think we're going to. Thanks a lot for your question.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
definitely. Definitely. Appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
Take care.
That's an interesting discussion.
Susan in West Virginia.
Yeah, I can't hear you very well. Sorry.
Okay, how's this?
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to explain how when I was younger, my mother died when I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sorry.
I had a hard time trying to figure out, with her being dead, where she went. And I had a lot of answers thrown on me that I couldn't accept. Mm-hmm. And so the Bible became unbelievable to me really early. But I had a really strong desire to, find out it just like the truth. It felt to me that there was something more. And for the longest time, I could never find it. And then I started getting into physics a little bit. And, the quantum measurement problem, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do, but I think you need to be careful about assuming things that actual physicists don't say.
I know it. I understand. I have no doubt
okay.
that my mind is not. I'm not educated as much as they are, but it hints at something to me far more extraordinary than any religion. And the Schrodinger's cat and the quantum entanglement, how particles once they're connected, they stay connected even when they're far apart. You can do something to one particle and it affects the other one.
Yeah, here's the thing, though. I mean, I hear this a lot, and I was a physics student for a couple of years in college, and
were you? Okay.
yeah, and so I probably understand quantum mechanics. I wouldn't say I understand it really well because nobody does, but I think I understand it a little better than the average person. But I think that. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in quantum mechanics that's difficult to get your head around, but there are also a whole lot of hucksters out there who are eager to put some kind of self-serving spin on it. And
yeah, I agree. I didn't get these ideas from anybody else.
But if you've read,
and we're just speaking generally.
Yeah, if you've read stuff by Deepak Chopra, for instance, he will tie the behavior of subatomic particles with the more general, broad, emergent process of how minds and thought works. And that tends to lead to a whole lot of completely unjustified conclusions that have nothing to do with the real physics.
But if you go down to the smallest part of what we're made of, you understand, like everything, I mean, does that not, it has to have some level that leaks over into there's something there, and I don't know what it is, and I'm just saying that maybe science one day will be able to go more and learn more in that direction.
Well, maybe it will, but until it has, it's not a good idea to go jumping to conclusions about what you think it will say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You just want to be careful to not, because especially if you are coming at this from a perspective of someone who is attempting to come to terms with the death of a loved one or some kind of situation in your life that had a serious. Now, but I know, but that's the kind of thing that is going to have an impact on people, and a long-term impact in many ways. And it's very easy to kind of fall prey to that, just as a way of kind of comforting yourself emotionally that this person that I loved and was very dear to me isn't really gone. That is I cannot think of a more natural human emotion than to not want to lose someone that you love and have them no longer with you, and to want to kind of cling to some hope. That's entirely understandable. But again, it's just you just want to make sure that you aren't taking that extra step where you're now just kind of fooling yourself that reality is working in a certain way to validate those.
I don't know how it works, but it seems
that's
really,
all. You just as long as you understand that we
really
don't.
Amazing and I don't know, fascinating to me, far more than any religion.
Yeah, the reality of the universe is far more strange and wondrous and weird than any of the fables of religion. That's true. But again,
so you never know. I mean, that's just how I look at it. I don't have any beliefs
Yeah.
But it's like you never know, and it's something to think about. But anyhow,
Yeah,
I
and
just wanted to run that by you.
Yeah, just as long as you maintain enough of a rational grounding to say, hey, we just don't know. Leave it there.
Yeah,
and,
I'm not basing any life decisions on it.
well, that's fine
Okay.
then. But but what you're experiencing emotionally is natural. So you shouldn't feel like guilty about that or like that's weird or anything.
Okay. All
Alrighty.
right. Well, thanks.
Thanks for
All
calling.
right. Thanks
Bye.
for your call.
Bye.
I want to tell the viewers watching in the chat room or something, I wasn't trying to be rude when I was kind of like smiling at the woman, but the point is our physicist friend Mark Lowy is sitting in the front row, and he was very politely giving that kind of, I'm going to stare at the ceiling and not say anything look, when the whole, all these talks about, the kind of the supposed mystical qualities of quantum physics comes up, and he's just sitting there like, this is Mark.
Right. That is an excellent
Yeah.
impression.
I'm watching that and just kind of going,
Okay.
but no insult to our previous caller intended.
Philip in Sherman, Texas.
Hey guys, am I on?
Yes, you are.
All right, awesome. Hey, so my question, I was kind of thinking about this recently. I was thinking about it, and atheism is basically a view on one subject, whether or not God, whether or not one believes in God, basically. And why would that have any effect on other beliefs? Like, theoretically, you could be pro-life and an atheist.
I know some pro-life atheists.
Yeah.
Not very many.
That's kind of my point is there's not very many of them. And, there's a couple like Christopher Hitchens who are conservative, in economic matters. But, for the vast majority of atheists are liberal. Why do you think that is the case?
It's true just empirically. I think that atheists voted something like 70-something% for Obama and Kerry in the last few elections.
Not to say that we all like them equally and well, but
Right.
With a two-party system, it's usually
disclosure, I did.
I think it's
You are correct that it's not necessarily the case that that it's incumbent on an atheism to side with a particular political position. But at least here in this country, the Republican Party has very firmly hitched their wagon to the religious right. And while there are a number of conservatives who don't necessarily identify with that, I think if you just look at the primaries for the last election, like there was a moment in the debates where every single candidate was asked, "What do you think about evolution?" And I think but one of them.
yeah.
What was like, well,
Waffle,
I believe
waffle. Yeah.
I believe what the Bible says.
And that was a solely religiously based question, right? That was a question specifically asked to kind of send up a sort of kind of a weather flag to see where their religious loyalties lay.
Sure.
And
there are a lot of positions where there are many different objections, but the only remotely convincing ones are religious. I mean, in my opinion, when we're talking about abortion, for the most part, almost all of them center around the idea that a baby has a soul, because from a straight up scientific standpoint, there's not that much significant difference between like a separate sperm and egg and a sperm and egg that just 2 seconds ago hooked up with each other.
Whereas the secular approach to being pro-choice comes from the question of bodily rights and bodily autonomy, and does the government have a right to make a woman's medical decision? And that is an entirely different premise than the premise that a lot of people in the anti-choice, and pro-life movement are coming from, which is a very emotional, very religious attitude about the personhood of the infant and the ensoulment of a fetus, and that this is a precious baby in the eyes of Jesus and all that. So you're talking about two groups of people coming at a specific topic of debate, but from an entirely different a set of premises, and then that's where the clash comes up with.
Right.
Because we're talking about bodily rights, and they're talking about, precious Jesus babies, and it's like, how do you kind of mesh that? How do you find a meeting of the minds there? It's very hard.
Yeah. Now, if you are an atheist and you want to be economically conservative, but you don't want to associate yourself with all the social views that the Republican Party has, by and large, you have options. You can join the Libertarian Party, although it's still a distant third in most political elections. So
Right.
I
If you look at,
sympathize with my Libertarian friends while not agreeing with them.
It's very
That
diplomatic
it
of
can
you,
be
Russell.
frustrating to get appropriate representation.
Or you can just vote as an independent, like go candidate by candidate in terms of whatever your conscience dictates. You don't have to affiliate with a
That's
party.
true.
I mean, I've been watching some of Penn Jillette's material, and he's a libertarian.
I am aware, yes.
Oh,
Yeah, very much so. And so he would agree with the social standpoint of liberals, where he would be pro-choice, pro-gay rights, that kind of thing. But then also at the same time, he would say, yeah, don't tax the rich, pure capitalism, that kind of thing.
Okay. Well,
And so-
yeah. Okay. Well, we're not going to get deep into those kind of political discussions because we feel like it's outside the scope of the show.
I understand, yeah.
Or it could just end up dominating the rest of the episode.
Or that,
People.
yeah.
There's that factor.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sure. But one more point I was going to make is sort of like why, generally, do you tend to find atheists, particularly in America, leaning more liberally politically? I think is also that they're the social issues. The way in which American conservatives lean, and Russell kind of addressed this. I mean, they're very affiliated with the religious right, but also politically. If you look at, for example, take anti-gay attitudes, right? Well, I think that most conservatives get those from their religious teachings, for example. Also, attitudes towards like women's rights and gender roles and things like that. You start out being taught a certain set of beliefs in a particular religious upbringing, and then you embrace those as an adult, and then those inform your politics. And so if you grow up with these kinds of views about gender roles and gay rights and what have you, and whether homosexuality is a sinful thing, if you are leaning that way politically, and then that becomes a general conservative attitude, then as atheists, if we're the ones who are opposed to those belief systems anyway, then naturally we're going to take the opposite view on those social issues, simply because we're rejecting the belief system generally. And part of a belief system, what really aggravates us sometimes is when there are some atheists who don't like these ideas coming up. They don't like to be brought into discussions about social issues. They think that's completely outside the purview of atheism. And we get, every once in a while, like on a forum, you get somebody who will complain. It's like, what's all this feminism or gay rights or whatever got to do with atheism? And it's like, well, because it all kind of comes together as a big gestalt, right? I mean, people who believe in God just don't sit around going, well, I believe in God, and they don't leave it at that. That informs what they do in all aspects of their lives. And so, it's a much bigger tent than some people want to accept, I guess. Right?
So you would say that first comes the social issues, and once they've been indoctrinated into those views, then they would adopt the views of the entire party, being, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
less
think
focused on the
they're
rich.
necessarily, they would have to be connected. I mean, certainly, to throw out an example, the current Pope has been raising some hackles by talking about Jesus and the poor and stuff, which isn't something you hear much from Republicans currently. But earlier in the show, I was talking about religion as sort of a support network, and when you get in with that in crowd, maybe one of the downsides of that is that you're pushed towards sort of a complete package of political beliefs that are basically just groupthink to some extent.
Okay.
Very good. Well, thank you guys so much. I'll let you get on to the next caller, and I
do
really enjoy the show.
All
See you
right.
later.
Well, we appreciate it very much. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Cool.
Yes, it is.
Hey, I called last week.
That's right. I remember.
And
You called like at the I picked you up after the show, and I
right.
immediately said that I need to take your question during the show.
yes, you do. So I got out of church early today just so I could call you guys up.
Okay.
Hope the pastor isn't listening. So
You should hope
Well-
he is. I mean, you're going to be a good representative of the religion, right?
This is all on video, you know. So, yeah.
Anyway, you guys are pretty rational. You know, I'm a big fan. I watch it all the time.
Thank you.
Why, thank you.
And you guys are a couple of juggernauts over there. So
I like to
If-
think we're really nice juggernauts.
yeah, you're inexorable forces, you know, against superstition.
Okay, you're buttering us up. What's the
Yeah,
question?
stop that.
So the question is,
Ask your question.
somebody could provide you proof of Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, you guys would believe, right?
Sure.
If they, they presented bodies or something. Okay, so to most people, they don't believe in the Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot, but I guess if you're open-minded enough and you're rational, if you could be presented with a body and examined by a panel of, National Academy of Sciences or whatever, you'd believe.
Yeah, on the other hand, people who already believe in the Loch Ness Monster consider themselves extremely rational, extremely open-minded, because they're willing to accept the Loch Ness Monster basically with no evidence. That's really
Okay.
open-minded.
Yeah,
so there's a
okay.
limit there.
Yeah.
Good point. My question for you guys is, what would it take for you to believe in God? What sort of proof, what sort of evidence would you need?
You want it first?
yeah.
I've
I've
thought
on
of
you.
it. Okay.
Well, all right, this is going to sound a little bit glib, but depending on the God you're talking about, and let's just say for the sake of argument, we're discussing the Christian God who is said, among other things, to be omniscient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, an omniscient God who wants my worship, wants to save my soul, wants to bring me into his kingdom upon my death, is very interested in my welfare. Even if I wouldn't know or wouldn't be able to come up with an answer as to what evidence might convince me of his existence, he would know what that evidence would be. And he is entirely at liberty at any time, like right this second, to present me with that evidence. He would know what would convince me even if I didn't. So the conclusion would be, if he knows this then already, why has he not presented it to me? Why isn't he presenting it to me? If he has presented it to me and I didn't know that that was what I was being presented with, then wouldn't that mean he was wrong in thinking that that would have been the evidence to persuade me? That doesn't seem like it would make sense. So if there is evidence, if he knows what it is, if he's up there and omniscient, then he must not be presenting it to me. Maybe my atheism is part of his plan. So again, but the point is, all of these are just kind of unfalsifiable ideas. And a real problem that gods have as a concept is that, unlike something like the Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or some sort of physical phenomenon that you could examine, supernatural phenomena tend to be, you can't examine them, but based on the scientific principle of falsifiability, which is you have to be able to look at an idea and say, well, if this idea weren't true, what would the world around us look like? What would conditions be, right? I mean, for example, what would the world look like if, say, the sun rises in the east, right? Well, now, how is that a falsifiable statement? Well, if we ever woke up one day and the sun started rising in the north, or the west, or any kind of other direction, then we would say to ourselves, all right, then this whole premise that the sun rises in the east has been falsified, right? But if we look at a situation and saying, and we can say to ourselves, the sun is consistently rising in the east day after day after day after day, and then we can say, all right, presented with several opportunities to be falsified, the premise has resisted falsification. Then we can go ahead and say, all right, we now have our evidence. We can decide that this is a true statement, or provisionally true statement, as science always likes to leave a little wiggle room. But the problem with gods is, what is that falsifiable? What are those criteria, right? I have always asked I always ask believers whenever they want to talk about their beliefs in a scientific concept or context, what would a non-God designed universe look like? If you believe that this universe is the rational creation of a thoughtful mind, of an intelligent and purposeful mind, well, if it weren't that kind of universe, what kind of universe would we be in? What would its laws look like? what would space be like? What would planets be like?
How would it be any different than it is?
Yeah, how would it be different? How would we know, right? Or what would we expect to see in a universe that was God designed that we would not see if it were not God designed? And you can't, and that's really not a question you can answer, which tends to say that mean that we kind of have to dispense with gods as explanations for things if we cannot even come up with a basis by which we can study the question. So I hope that wasn't too rambling and drawn out, but that's kind of the whole idea.
No, that's pretty,
I tend to do that. Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is because I ask a lot of my atheist friends, and they say, well, maybe if he could, maybe if a 200-foot man, popped out of the clouds, from torso up, from waist up, and he's looking down, and he makes himself known to me. And somebody else said, well, if you could raise somebody from the dead, and somebody else said, they
Well,
say
I mean, there are a lot of problems with those kind of tests, mainly because, like, you're dealing with something, that's supposed to be pretty much infinitely powerful, and any
Right.
finite display of power would be difficult to accept. And it's especially hard to take that seriously if you're expecting someone, like if somebody expects to see something by pretty much infinitely powerful, and any
Right.
finite display of power would be difficult to accept. And it's especially hard to take that seriously if you're expecting someone, like if somebody expects to see something by themselves alone, like if they're camping in the woods and this 200-foot man comes out of the water, and then later they're going to go home to their atheist friends and say, hey guys, I saw a 200-foot man coming out and he said he was God, and they'll be like, what were you smoking?
right.
Just another typical camping trip.
It's difficult, but I have a more concrete answer, which I know still doesn't quite meet the test, but it's one that I like. If you don't mind me laying this out for you a little bit.
Let's hear it.
And I know some people watching have already heard me use this before, but it's my favorite. So
You go right ahead.
in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Vogons, who are coming to destroy the Earth at the beginning, show up, and there's this scene where their ship appears in the sky. Everybody sees the ship. There's panic everywhere, and immediately every TV set, every movie screen, every security camera, and every pool of water in the world suddenly pops up this perfect video of this Vogon captain showing up and delivering a clear message, which is, we're about to destroy the Earth in 5 minutes. Prepare yourselves. Not a single person can doubt that there is an alien right there presenting, that there are actual alien ships up in the sky right now, as unlikely as that seems, and they can corroborate with each other. And I feel like an infinitely powerful God, if he actually wanted to be found, if he didn't want to be doubted, should be able to do at least as good a job as the Vogons did.
But then you run into an additional problem, which is that Christians always complain that if God did reveal himself to all of humanity in that unambiguous a fashion, then it would impact our free will, it would make us all slaves and robots, and God doesn't want unthinking followers and what have you. And I'm always puzzled by that, because then I have to bring up Saul's road to Damascus experience, where God not only revealed himself to Saul, but he basically forced himself upon Saul.
Supposedly.
That's
story.
according to the story, right? I mean, he did everything practically, but grab him by the scruff and drag him off of his donkey and beat him up, right? I mean, he really made his presence known to Saul. It was a direct encounter conversion, as the story goes. So I'm like, well, if what was good enough for Saul isn't good enough for me, why not? I mean, if the road to Damascus experience was true, and that was an unambiguous revelation of God, of his existence on the part of God to not only someone who was an unbeliever but an active persecutor of the followers of Jesus, then no reason in the world why, the same treatment might not work on me, assuming the story's true.
Yeah,
So-
because it's a little weird that we're expected to now read this book that hasn't been updated in 2,000 years and read the story that somebody who we don't know wrote, that some guy saw God on the road and some other guy, doubting Thomas, had Jesus show up and say, "Here, stick your fingers in my holes. I'm really here."
Yeah, and then here's, ew.
What?
And then you have,
well.
this theologian A says interpret the scriptures this way. Theologian B says no, he's wrong. Interpret them this way. Theologian C says you're both full of crap. Interpret them this way. And then theologian D says I don't know what these guys are talking about. Here's the right interpretation. And that's been going on for centuries. So,
I feel like we've monologued a little long.
It's our show. Dang it.
Sorry, Matteo. Do
Yeah.
you want
No, that's fine.
to say anything else about that?
I think you guys have answered my questions pretty well.
Okay.
But I was hoping to hear something, something, I don't know, like a 200-foot tall man or something.
Well, you can see why I'd be skeptical about hearing somebody else's experience with that, right?
Sure.
And I mean, I think you can probably understand that from our point of view, it's an incredibly unlikely claim that requires a lot of backup. Like, I could equally well ask you, what would a Muslim God have to show you to convince you that you've been following the wrong guy all the time?
He would have to disprove everything in my holy book.
Okay,
with
so that's a pretty
waterproof-
tall order to fill, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Right.
We're
Well,
coming from the same place.
I don't know, but for God, would it be that tough?
That's
he could
what we
display-
said.
That's the point, yeah. I mean,
Right,
even if I wouldn't know what evidence would convince me, an omniscient God would.
Right. That's very good. Okay, well, I'm going to think about that. I'm going to go
Yes.
ponder that.
So your pastor will be proud of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank-
But feel
You
free
got
to
it.
call back anytime after you thought about it.
I'm going to think about it. I'm going to give you guys a call back. Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Awesome.
I'll talk to you later then.
Thanks
Bye.
for calling,
Okay.
Matteo.
God bless you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
for the sentiment. Yes. Nick in Minnesota?
Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to call in. I tried before, but I hadn't gotten through. So it's nice to. Hope you guys are doing all right.
Pretty good?
Can't complain.
I wanted to talk about a friend of mine and I kept having a discussion about spirituality because he's not the most religious person, but he can't seem to let go of it because he feels that spirituality is necessary for him. But if I ask him for what he means about spirituality, I don't get a fully straight answer. And so I'm not sure, do you have any idea of what would be the main difference between religiosity and spirituality, and if they are mutually exclusive?
I would say it's fine to just tell this guy. If he can't tell you what he means by spirituality, you could just say, well, then I'm glad you're happy with it, but I reject this idea because I don't understand what you're talking about. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, and although it's kind of a curious question as to why he is leaning towards accepting it, even though he hasn't quite worked out.
Even though
Sometimes people
obviously
do that.
he
yeah.
doesn't understand
Yeah.
what he's talking about.
But that's the whole problem with spirituality, right? It's kind of like this all-purpose sort of warm, fuzzy, soft word that doesn't really seem to mean a whole lot, other than here is what I think it means just based on the kinds of people that I've known who use it. They're actually saying to me, yeah, I'm religious, but please don't lump me in with Pat Robertson and those guys. That's usually what it's a substitute word. It's a kind of a way of cloaking religion, because religion, especially in a largely secular culture, has gotten a lot of bad PR, and you equate it with sleazy televangelists and scummy politicians who want to tell the gays they can't, stuff like that. And so if you get people who have maybe lean us, again, this can tend to be a little bit more liberal leaning in the politics maybe, but at the same time they want there to be these kinds of higher powers then they'll adopt spiritual because it's kind of a soft, safe word that doesn't really mean a whole lot other than what they apply to it.
Yeah, from what I've looked into, there is no real, single definition for it, that everybody seems to have their own interpretation of what it means, and so it's kind of a throwaway word to me. That me coming from where I'm at, personally, I'm a writer, so I have a respect for words, but I also understand that there's creative liberties that can be taken with certain words. But do you think it would be beneficial to have a more strict definition of what spirituality is, so people can't necessarily hide behind it?
I think if there was, you can't force people to use one definition of a word over another. I think if spirituality had a more concrete definition, then people wouldn't use it, because the whole point of spirituality is to just have this feel-good word that Martin was talking about, that describes things that you can't explain, and you can't make people act not silly. I don't know.
It's good to know what you're talking about in life generally, so, and it's good to not be in the habit of using words if you don't even know what they mean. I think,
and it's good to be friends with people who know what they're talking about, and maybe minimize the amount of time you spend with annoying people.
Yeah. So in terms of just developing yourself as a rational thinker, I do believe that people probably would be a whole lot better off if they didn't just allow themselves to engage in the kind of lazy, fuzzy thinking that makes these generic terms like spiritual part of the lexicon, right? So I think that don't know what you're talking about. Just at a baseline level, just know at least what it is you're talking. Even if you're wrong, right? Even if your ideas are wrong, at least try to formulate an idea that you can kind of grab a hold of and mold into something solid.
Well, that's about all I had. I hope the rest of the day goes well for you guys.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, take care.
All right. Speaking of the rest of the day, we're about 15 minutes from the end of the show, and just want to remind locals in Austin that the after show dinner at downtown Threadgills is always a rollicking good time, if I say so myself.
Is that what it is?
That's what it is.
It's a rollicking good time.
I define it to be a rollicking good time.
I thought it was a roaring good time.
Oh. Heretic.
It's just my interpretation. You shouldn't oppress me with your
Ricky
dogmatic
in
views.
the Virgin Islands.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Ricky.
Yes, a couple of weeks ago, someone called about a Slate magazine interview in which Richard Dawkins supposedly minimized child sexual abuse, and I'd like to come to Professor Dawkins' defense.
Okay.
I haven't seen that interview, but Dawkins did address this issue on a podcast of the Thinking Atheist, and he said that to make a big deal out of his own childhood experience would be to minimize the experience of other children who were severely traumatized.
By child abuse?
Yeah, I remember, Russell, you said that Dawkins is free to speak from his own experience.
Right.
And that's exactly what he did. And I think people have been reading this wrong. And the fact is, he wasn't traumatized by his experience, and I think it's reading too much into his memoirs to think that he is speaking for all abuse victims.
Well, it's not necessarily anything to do with us, but it's. I do believe that it is, when you're a public figure like that, you are in the position of having sometimes to be very, very careful about some things you say, and I think that Dawkins, like a great many other public figures, has occasionally maybe said things off the cuff that, and sometimes he has said things that were extremely. And perhaps not deliberately insensitive, but came from a position of real ignorance on a subject. Sometimes he gets misinterpreted. Sometimes I think he's criticized in a valid way. being a prominent public figure, and we need to be very careful about this in atheism, doesn't mean that your views are above criticism. It doesn't mean that
Oh, yes, of
especially
course,
especially as
especially for us.
especially as atheists, we need to be very, very careful not to put people, including very prominent and respected people, on pedestals, and that I think can. When people have expressed really, really serious disappointment in some things that, for example, Dawkins or maybe Hitchens has said in the past, or that they really disagree with, sometimes I think the severity of their disappointment in him may have come from, mistakenly perhaps putting that person on a pedestal, and then when they reveal themselves to have human foibles, they really lash out at that. And I see Dawkins as being like anyone else. He said some things that I think have been very educational for me. I've learned a great deal about biology and evolution from him. I certainly do not disagree with him on all social issues. Sometimes I think he takes some more flack than he deserves on charges of, for example, Islamophobia. But at the same time, I think that he has made some very offensive and inappropriate comments of a sexist nature. So, people can have right ideas, wrong ideas, no matter how famous or well-versed they are in their field.
Yeah. Let me say this, though. Dawkins' original comment was kind of clumsily worded and definitely lent the impression that he was minimizing the problems of child abuse. But I'm seeing that he has since, like you're saying, come out on this other show and specifically clarified what he was talking about and apologized for it. So I think that whether or not he said something that sounded dumb at the time, I'm a guy who respects the value of a good and sincere apology and clarification. And I think, and I'm going to read what Dawkins said right here later. He said, if I'm wrong about any particular individual, if any of my companions really was traumatized by the abuse long after it happened, if perhaps it happened many times and amounted to more than the single disagreeable but brief fondling that I endured, I apologize. I don't know, that's kind of a middle of the road, I'm sorry if you were offended, but at the same time, I appreciate that that he made a point to come out and say, yeah, there are victims of sexual abuse who should not be minimized. So to the extent that he's fixed the record on that, go Dawkins. Okay?
Yeah, I think so too. And as far as worshiping people, as part of growing up, I learned from experience that worshiping anyone other than Jesus was bound to end in disillusionment, and then Jesus disillusioned me.
Yeah, that's a pretty hard one to come back from,
then
right?
they had it all right except one.
Yeah, and Adam W. addressed this issue on Free Thought blog, so if people might want to take a look at that.
Adam Wingard, he's a good guy.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
That's
Wingard, I
it.
think
Bye.
that's
All right.
Wingard.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye.
It is Wingard, right?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't
he's-
follow him. Sorry, Adam.
It's a good blog. Yeah.
Okay. Leslie in Mobile, Alabama.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Martin Russell.
Hi.
I'm really glad you guys are the host tonight. You're absolutely adorable. And Martin, you were kind enough to respond to an email of mine back in September, and I appreciate it.
Martin is totally adorable. Who could disagree with that?
Yes, you're totally adorable. And Martin, are you Canadian by any chance?
Why? Just because I'm so polite? Is that what you think?
You're clean, you're polite, and you say,
Oh,
I could've
I'm
sworn
clean.
I
I'm like this filthy Texan pig.
Exactly.
No, I just I what can I say? My mama
Okay.
raised me right to be
You pronunciate well. I have
and
a
I
quick
take my adorable
question.
pills every day.
I called back in September, and Matt and Jen freed my mind. They made me realize I'm an atheist, and I'm thrilled. My other issue now, though, is I'm incredibly pissed off at everybody who ever lied to me about religion, and you guys are so relaxed and groovy. I was hoping to get what your opinion is on how to deal with that. Like,
Well, after you've
I'm
killed
42.
everyone, then you're fine, right? I mean, it's like, it's a very relaxing thing. You can just be like, you can be very zen at that moment. It's not a problem, right?
The Atheist Experience is not officially indone killing people.
Well, I ate the baby you sent me, and I've got my membership card.
There you go. Yeah.
But are you ever pissed off about being lied to?
Oh, there are quite a number of things I get pissed off about. So don't worry about that. That's a natural human emotion. But
First of all, not everybody who lied to you was themselves in a position to be aware that they were lying.
Sure.
And you know, they may be victims as much as you were. And I'm sure that you,
Right.
while you were a Christian, were responsible for saying a lot of things that weren't true to other people who might have looked up to you.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you
Nobody
are,
looks up to me, don't worry.
Oh.
and if you are, and if you're a person who sincerely, genuinely believes that there is a hell and an afterlife, and that as an apostate or an unbeliever, that you're going to be tortured there after you die, then you would have, a duty to try to warn the people that are near and dear to you to avoid that horrible fate, right? So it isn't even necessary. They may be lying, but it's because they themselves were indoctrinated to really, really believe that. So it's like this whole sort of link in the chain of generations of this horrible teaching that have gone down and just have made people. So part of getting over being mad at those folks is just to realize, well, actually they were just lied to just as badly, and then you can have a little bit more empathy for them.
Yeah, and I mean, in general, part of not being mad at people is to make a sincere effort to see things from their point of view and not necessarily agree with them, but like try to get a handle on where they are coming from. I don't assume that people who call with ridiculous notions are idiots. I just think that they're
wrong.
Yeah, they've been misled, and I'm sorry about that.
Right.
But the fact that they're even calling us means that they want to talk about it, which is interesting, right? Like our caller earlier today,
Yeah, that's true.
He played hooky from church,
right?
Just to talk to us. So that's that's a good step at least.
On the other hand, people who aggressively say things that aren't true and keep repeating things that they've even after they've been specifically corrected on and shown facts.
Yeah, they're assholes.
Get mad at them.
Yeah.
Seriously, Martin, you're adorable.
Okay, you, Leslie, are adorable. Okay?
Thank you so much, guys. I know you prefer theist callers, but your show saved my mind, and I wanted to say thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
And the theists don't
Take
tell us
care.
we're adorable.
Have a good time at Thread Gills.
We shall.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. We've only got a couple minutes to take this one last call that just came in.
Yes.
And that's kind of a pity, but we got Larry in Queens, New York.
Hi, Larry.
Well, this is Russ and Martin.
That's right.
Oh, okay. Yo, guys, oh, man. Yeah, I'm going to be honest. You guys are awesome.
Thank
I'm
you.
a Christian, but I listen to your guys,
Well, everybody's just
There are
like
things
fans today.
Yeah, be mean to us.
Just a quick question.
All right.
It's about, I'm reading a story in the Bible, the 6th chapter. Try to make it short as possible. The story about the giants. They said the purpose for the flood was to wipe out the giants. But,
What?
Giants on the earth?
what gets me that it said giants was in the earth in those days and after. So, if the purpose was to get rid of the flood, if the flood was to get rid of the giants, then how the heck did they get back in the earth?
Can you give me a chapter? Wait. Can you give me a chapter and verse on the flood was to wipe out giants?
Talking about the
Nephilim?
Nephilim?
The flood, it's not exactly. Well, it's in Genesis, the 6th chapter.
Yeah.
Around the first, second, and third verses or something like that.
Can you read that to me?
Giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children. This is the part of Genesis that you don't actually hear about in Sunday school.
Yeah, or
you have
get written about in children's books.
A, giants giants are on the earth, apparently, of some sort. B, angels come down from heaven and bang human women. I didn't learn that in Sunday school. I'm like, awesome, okay, fill me in. And that's what's going on here.
There's a lot of takes on that. And I'm like, okay, which version or which theory is right? You know,
I would not dignify that. I would not dignify that by calling it a theory.
Yeah, it's
a
gotta
bunch
way to
of
go.
junk written down in
Okay.
a book by people
Yeah.
who didn't know any better.
Yeah, these are what are known as ancient legends. You know, the Greeks had
Okay.
them, the Romans had them, the Sumerians had them. This
Yeah,
is
you
all-
want to
and the
read
Greeks too
some
as well.
crazy stuff? Go look up like Dionysus. He's my favorite god.
Yeah, at least, you know, and you know, all the Greeks at least had the courtesy to let all their gods be a bunch of raging drunks and
Yeah,
brawlers
sure.
and things like that.
We're out of time. I'm sorry.
Well, thanks for the call. It's a good way to end, I
No,
guess.
no problem. I'm admit I like your guys. The guys are good.
Thanks, man.
All right,
Thanks
see
for
you.
calling.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week. And thanks Martin for joining us.
Thank you. It was fun being adorable on television with you,
Yes.
as always, Russell.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I got him. Hey Eric, in Arkansas, Arizona. Wait, Arkansas. Yeah. I just got AR here. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I'm kind of caught in an awkward situation, and I wanted to know what your thoughts were on it. I have a 3-year-old nephew who likes to pray at dinner, and I'm an atheist, and I feel like I'm kind of lying to him when I pray. But I also feel that if I didn't pray, he would be a little confused, and I'm not really sure I want him to, like, be confused. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Ooh. How much trouble would you be in with the parents if you confused him?
I think quite a bit of trouble. They
Okay.
go to church regularly. My mom knows I'm an atheist, but she's told me that she's not happy with it.
Okay. But, I mean, this is your brother or sister's kid?
Yes, this is my sister's son.
kid. And your sister knows or not?
I don't think my sister knows. I think she might have an idea, but I'm not really sure if she knows.
Maybe it's time to tell her. Because I think that this is a talk that you need to have with her before you have it with him. But
yeah, because what it boils down to, basically, we'll just get kind of this.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Oh, I said. Oh, you turned
I'm
off
off.
your
Yeah.
mic.
Okay.
Your
What
fault.
I hope was I off the whole show? I hope no, I wasn't.
No.
They would have said if I had been. Because what it does boil down to at a very baseline level, right, is that you're the nephew, they're the parents, and so they do kind of have the prerogative in how they want to raise him. And if they want to raise him in church, then that's their prerogative. You may not. So being an atheist, obviously, you're not going to like that, but that's. But at the same time, as the nephew, and then as the brother, you have a family relationship with them that you want to maintain on its terms. So I agree. I agree with Russell. I talked to your sister, and parents a bit about a little bit more about it. The first thing that probably will help is just to let them know that to let them realize that even though you don't see eye to eye on religion, you're still you, right? And make it be this thing that you're open. That and say if you have any questions for me, and make it an inviting thing like that.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you're probably still going to have to deal with your nephew while you hash this out with the rest of your family. And I guess if you
it's not. I mean, I hate to say this, but it's not up to him to deal with the nephew.
Right, but it's also not up to him to lie to make his nephew feel okay.
Well, I mean,
right?
but what's happening? Is it a situation where like the nephew at the dinner table prays and then he looks at you and says, "Hey, Uncle, Eric, why aren't you praying?" Is it like is it creating an awkward situation there or what?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay. See, I didn't.
I didn't leave the room whenever he does that. But if he catches me, he'll say, "Come pray with me." So come back and pray with him.
Well, yeah, then I agree with her. Talk to.
I mean,
the sister.
I'm trying to come up with some variation of just saying I don't pray, which doesn't get very specific, but still
I've thought about kind of making something up like God thinks I'm so special that I don't have to pray anymore.
Yeah, but that's still lying.
Yeah, I know. But I figured if you're gonna lie, go all out. I'm kidding.
That's not in the commandments.
No.
I mean, I generally feel uncomfortable having to lie to people. So, I mean, I guess that I can't tell you what your business is. So whatever you're comfortable with, but I would think long and hard about a way to excuse myself that doesn't invite further conversation with your nephew, and tell your sister that you're uncomfortable with this, and what does she think you should do?
Okay. Thanks, you're giving me a lot to think about.
Getting photobombed.
Yeah, it's not really it's not an easy matter. We won't pretend to give you easy answers on it. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, you've helped.
Okay. Well, good luck to you.
All right.
All right, y'all have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Is that it?
I think it may be it.
That is it.
The woman calling from West Virginia talking about